Greetings, fellow YouTubers. For this video, I'd like to nerd out on the Matrix. Because I'm drinking the red cup. It's like taking the red pill. Take the red pill with the red cup. So one very interesting thing about the Matrix as a whole is, first, when you look at the movie, The Matrix, there is an interesting theory out there. It's on the YouTube channel called Movie Theory, that pretty much, in one sentence, concludes that every single part of the movie is actually the Matrix. That once Neo, Morpheus, Trinity, and the rest of the people that got unplugged from the Matrix, from the actual machines in the movie, ended up at the underground city of Zion, that too was also simply another layer, if you will, of the Matrix. One indication of this that the video references is the superhuman powers Neo was actually able to use outside in the real world. And another good reference is the famous scene, arguably the most complicated monologue in cinematic history, with Neo talking to the actual architect, the complete architect and creator of the Matrix and its purpose. And one thing that I found neat about this is thinking about that, I never heard this theory before in that outlet, but when I looked up the definition, a real definition for the Matrix, I figured it's only proper to give one if I'm going to talk about it on this video. I had an aha moment, because the whole theory about all parts of the Matrix in the film being another part of the program is precisely part of the definition. The theory is explained in one word, and the word is that of the movie. The definition of the Matrix, a scientific definition: an environment or material in which something develops a surrounding medium or structure. So really, it can be philosophically be argued that all of existence is Matrix, that you can't get out of that, because you as a life organism, me as a life organism, these blades of grass as life is only here because of the rest of the environment. An environment cannot be without an organism, and even the organism cannot be without the environment. And in the structure of an environment or material in which something develops, in a surrounding medium or structure, you really can't get out of that. Interesting urban definition of the Matrix: controlled environment or structure. Controlled environment or situation where people act or behave in ways that conform to the roles predetermined to them by society, or the grid, the power structures of the day. And that is very intriguing, because that comes down to what a lot of people have been talking about, with using the Matrix as that film as a good metaphor and analogy to where we are today in modern society. Now, before I move on, I'd like to also point out one interesting thing was in the original, just the regular scientific definition of the Matrix, environment or material in which something develops, the sentence they used as an example was: free choices become the matrix of human life. And if you've ever looked at existential literature, one of the most pop culture existentialists, the Jean-Paul Sartre in France, he had an interesting thought about how freedom and responsibility are really one and the same. If you break down the word responsibility, it simply means respond to your ability. So whatever abilities we respond to, Jean-Paul Sartre was arguing that we have our freedom from that. That even those who are oppressed are, in some regards, free, while feeling not free because of their choices and responsibilities that they act to collectively as a community. And many would be insulted by this, but he would argue that the friction and insult is the avoiding of the pressure and anxiety of really self-actualization to the fact that every single thing in our reality, really, we bear full responsibility towards. And so, very interestingly enough, that brings us to modern society and back loop with the Matrix. So one funny thing I noticed too with all this is if you look at the film, you see Neo, you see Morpheus, you see Trinity as they're the heroes, and they seem to really very much resemble the truth seekers, if you will, right? But the film, if it's all a matrix, then even the truth seekers get fooled. One way that I've always, based on seeing the Matrix film and other experiences when I was younger, I have been encouraged, or rather inspired, to study societies because I've always seen it very much as a control matrix, as in correlation to the urban definition, right? That is to say, to me, what the matrix is social engineering. The matrix is the socially engineered formula that is repetitiously repeated generation after generation, nation after nation, civilizations after civilizations. In esoteric circles, one thing that's loved to be called in terminology with it is the Anunnaki psychosis, because it's so we have a world of such instability and violence. There's this sense that it's almost beyond us, and that we're almost channeling something that we as human beings can't even fully comprehend. But digressing, one definition I would give for the Matrix, based on my point of view, other than the one I just rambled, is the unconscious consent. The unconscious consent to willing our power away from us. If you look at all different structures in society, it's about divide and conquer in order to control. And with the structures, you always have wealth inequality through an oligarchical structure, the few controlling the many. And if you look at, for instance, our education system, our healthcare system, our and this is in the Western world, I'm an American myself. You look at our criminal justice system, you look at all the different structures in our government dictating society, and you notice a pattern of externalization. No, you can't heal yourself. You have to get an external drug that is synthesized in order to cure you. Never mind the fact that the healthcare system doesn't care to actually cure you, because that wouldn't be cost effective as much as it would be sustaining your illness and profiting off of it. That's a whole nother video. You look at the education system, especially K through 12, they externalize the information. They tell you to not daydream. They tell you to sit down, shut up, and pay attention. And they make education this authoritarian force, making you feel isolated and external, thereby intimidated and powerless to the institution. And in very much ways, I feel like that's part of the social matrix. I like to coin the term social matrix because it's that system of control that really we are convinced at times aren't controlled, but it's very easy to do that when we were born into it. Right? The most sophisticated form of slavery is now because people are convinced that they're not actually enslaved in many regards, because for most that is a very overwhelming conclusion, and people think, well, that's pessimistic, where are we going to go anywhere with this? But that's just it, recognizing the problem. People look at problems like conspiracy theories on YouTube and stuff, and that are fear-mongering. They look at problems and then they focus so much on problems, they forget to actually recognize the silver lining in the cloud. The problem's existing because there's a solution that is to be found within that problem. They're not separate, and that's part of the Western mind continuously wanting to compartmentalize things. Is that sense of the matrix? It's dividing and separating us through our unconscious consent to convince us in a way that we ourselves do not have as much power as we actually do, than we actually willed. Having said that, I would like to end this video by comparing our social matrix to the mechanisms of the subconscious mind and defining brainwashing. Okay, and I'm ill prepared. I should have got a precise definition of what brainwashing is, but essentially, as long as you have a subconscious, you will be brainwashed. Every single one of us who are sentient human beings, we are brainwashed no matter what, and it's inescapable. Why? Because the subconscious is quantum. What do you mean quantum? The subconscious is on 24/7. Ever since you were born until you die, even when you're sleeping, the subconscious knows everything around you and is picking up on everything around you and is responding to everything around you. Psychologists say in studies time and time again, don't take my word for it, look it up yourself, of course. 95%, roughly 95 to 98% of our day-to-day behavior patterns and personalities is truly just operated on the subconscious. It's subconsciously driven. We do it without even thinking about it, the way we act and behave. And we mistake ourselves of thinking it's consciously driven, right? That's part of the problem, and that's what it is to awaken from the matrix. But see, that's just it. If the movie theory stands correct, and it seems in my personal opinion it does, because the actual definition is part of the theory that the movie was portraying in the first place, then it's not about preventing yourself from being brainwashed. It's impossible. It's not brainwashing is social programming, social engineering. We naturally want to follow the crowd because we feel more together that way. We're social creatures, and so between entertainment, between media, and especially with the invasive ads that you can't escape from, it seems these days, that's all ways to program our subconscious. That's the liberating thing about YouTube, is if you're using it as a tool and you're using it as a tool of free thinking, you take every single thing you hear with healthy doubt and skepticism, allowing yourself to have an open-minded to hearing things that most people wouldn't even consider, right? You always want to look at the stuff that you're not even going to consider. It's simple. It's a matter of brainwashing yourself, programming yourself. To awaken from the matrix is to not unplug. It is impossible to fully escape from the matrix. That's not the point. The point is to recognize that you are a co-creator and architect to the matrix. You are the person running it. As William Shakespeare once said, the world is but a stage and we the players. Beautiful, true, but it's also a little linear, don't you think? We're not just the players. We're not just the actors on stage. We are the actors, we are the audience, we are the producers, we are the directors, we are the script writers. Simultaneously, quantumly, here and now. And it's really determined by our conscious mind, if you will, is the player, but our subconscious and our unconscious patterns, those are the script writers, those are the producers and directors. That's what's beautiful about meditation. You're applying conscious intent towards subconscious mechanisms. You don't have to consciously think about breathing. You don't have to consciously think about your heart beating. Thank goodness, because if you did, you would probably not be here right now. That's the subconscious mind's job. The subconscious being in the same rhythmic pattern of the body. And the body's intellect is quantum. The subconscious and the innate body are a mere reflection of each other. Your subconscious sends signals to all other subconsciouses based on your body language. When you're applying a conscious intent towards that vaster intelligence that is continuously circuiting, well, that's when you start really breathing and smiling, man. It's awesome. Because there's liberation to that. There's no resistance all of a sudden. There's no fighting against the system. No, it's recognizing your true power within it. A matrix, here's another good definition. It's a Holinarchical system. What's holinarchy? Holinarchy is in contrast to hierarchy. Holinarchy is the natural democratic equality that you see in the ecology. Ecology is a perfect example of holinarchy because every single thing in a forest, for instance, every single thing is a part to the whole that's that forest, right? But every single part has a holon in it, a holon being the whole. Because if any part of that rainforest changes, then all of a sudden the whole of the rainforest is affected. Therefore, we as social beings, education is to being a student as vegetation is to being the seed. The knowledge is already within, and we help bring it out through our interactions with others as social creatures, just like wild seeds do, through mycelium relationships in the soil to communicate and socialize with all the other seeds in the ecology to grow. We are seeds. No wonder we have this manufactured, socially engineered matrix which makes us metaphorically just like the factory farm animals the majority of people consume, just like monocultural crops that are genetically modified and not really addressing the cure to issues and diseases. Because the monoculture crops, mono being one, means you're having one plant of the same strain everywhere, and organics really just the same practice of farming minus the chemicals, right? Add the chemicals in play, and pesticides. You have the relationship of pesticides to farming. Monocultural industrial agriculture farming is very much like the relationship of antibiotics to combat bacteria. The bacteria builds immunities just like super bugs, or bugs become super bugs because they build immunities in a agricultural, monocultural, genetically modified crop. We need to get back to being a wild seed, not some genetically engineered bullshit seed. Rambling there, but that's what the Matrix is to me. Ja.